When we got to the hotel, Molly directed me where to park by pointing. There was a certain place to park cars full of supplies, and since I'd be staying at the hotel now, it only made sense for me to share what I had. Molly had told me cars were parked in certain lots and only used for specific reasons to save on gas. There was a loophole for me though. Since this was my mother's car, it could be marked as mine to be used when and how I wanted until it ran out of gas. I almost took her up on the offer, but in the end, I declined. Before we left the car, I removed most everything from my backpack. I only kept Molly's book, Scarlet's kitten, and Molly's flashlight. I slung the backpack over my shoulder and followed Molly inside. She led me straight to her room and added my name to the card on the door, and without an awkward moment, we curled up on her bed, just holding each other. She laid her head against my chest, her hands lightly pressed against my chest and shoulder, almost like she was unsure I really existed. I had my right arm under her head as a makeshift pillow. My hand ran lightly over the back of her head, my fingers playing with her soft hair. I held my left hand pressed lightly against her lower back. Our bodies weren't pressed against each other, but our toes were. And for me, even that was amazing. I was breathless. I couldn't believe she was really here. She was really alive. Molly was laying in my arms, asleep. When we woke up, we held each other a little while longer. I'm not sure which one of us woke up first, but we were both careful not to wake each other up. After a while, we were forced to get out of bed by nature calling. She took me to what they were using as the restrooms, used clean wipes for a bath, and went to the kitchen for bottles of water and a surprisingly decent meal of eggs, bacon, and hash browns. They'd used generators to keep the fridge and freezer going, and the hotel had an amazing outdoor cooking pit. The cooking pit was decently new. The hotel had several large rooms rented out for events, conventions, reunions, wedding receptions, graduation celebrations, and things of that sort. The owner had realized that they built large rooms to hold events, that people would also need overnight rooms, for that they would be willing to pay higher prices for the convenience. On top of that, they had a restaurant in the hotel. People would eat there, even if it was also slightly higher priced, again, for the convenience. The perfect trifecta. Since they had a kitchen, they could cater the events in the hotel with ease. Having everything you could want all in one place made the hotel an instant success. And even though it was expensive, if you used the fullest of its ability, it was a lot cheaper than paying for the things separately. I enjoyed my meal knowing that I wouldn't be able to eat this kind of food for much longer. Eggs wouldn't be a problem. There were a decent amount of chicken coops in town. I didn't know if there were any pigs in the area, but if there were, then they could be raised and we'd still have fresh bacon. There were a few farming communities nearby, so maybe we could have potatoes. Even though I'm pretty sure potatoes weren't one of their regular crops, but you never know, I guess. Then I realized there was a chance we wouldn't be around long enough to raise pigs or grow potatoes. Guess there was still time for fresh eggs at least. After breakfast, Molly and I wandered around outside for a while, just enjoying being with each other. Eventually, though, Molly reluctantly led me to the information room. The room had one desk, one chair, a small stack of paper, and nothing else. I stared into Molly's stunning eyes, my eyes full of question. Molly stood on her toes, placed her hand on my shoulder for balance, and lightly kissed my forehead before softly guiding me to the chair. I sat down and pulled the stack of papers next to me and began to read. Unfortunately, I had most of my questions answered. Most of the information had been collected before the power had gone out. Some of the town's survivors had been higher-up doctors and politicians, so they received information few people had access to. Doctors had started to perform autopsies and every other test on the human body they could think of. Scientists started to test the air, water, soil, and every aspect of the earth we could think of. All results had come back completely normal. Maybe if they had more time, they could have come up with something, but those who could have made a difference were the first to go. When the deaths first started, the whole world was buzzing. Doctors and scientists from all over the world flooded emails, forums, and any other means of text communication. Unfortunately, they also communicated verbally. By the time everyone realized what brought on the laughter, most of the people in the world who could have made a difference were dead. The deadly laughter did not discriminate. Age, race, sex, health. It all meant nothing, as long as you were human. Plants were completely unaffected. Hours leading up to, and during the mass death, animals were terrified, but fine afterwards. Whatever this was, the animals had sensed it coming. Several towns in most, if not all, countries were hit at once. It spread unbelievably fast. Within hours it seemed the whole world was affected. Even in the individual towns, some people were affected sooner than others, but even that was sporadic. In some places, a room full of talking people had only 1 or 2 people die. However, some places had no survivors, at least no human survivors. No antidotes were found. Nothing stopped or slowed the effects once the laughter started. Some of the information collected stated test subjects had been heavily sedated or forced unconscious while laughing. None of the attempts made slowed the effects or prevented death. I was barely able to get through the section that explained what happened to each person after the laughter stopped. All I could do was think about Scarlet. Her death replayed in my mind over and over again as I read. The skin and bone were the only things not affected. Almost everything else more or less exploded and liquefied. The red liquid that poured from all openings in the body was a mixture of blood, liquefied organs, and muscle. It is unknown why the skin and bones were unaffected. No one knew what, how, or why this was happening, only that it was happening. After I finished reading, I just sat there staring at the papers in front of me. Tears slid down my face. Molly pushed the papers away from me, turned me towards her and held me while I cried. The only comforting thing I had was that I would at least spend the remainder of my life with Molly in my arms.